The royal nursery smelled like shame. Empress Kalira stood at the doorway and watched her 3 children press themselves against the cool stone walls, away from the sunlight that burned their sensitive skin. Their white scales caught the dim light like broken glass. Beautiful and wrong. That was what the court whispered. That was what she tried not to think every time she looked at them. Pyrrha, the eldest, noticed her first. The hatchling's crimson eyes met hers for just a moment before looking away. That small gesture cut deeper than any blade. Her own child could not hold her gaze, or perhaps would not. Kalira was not sure which possibility hurt more. "Mother," Pyrrha said softly, "did you need something?" The formality in that small voice made Kalira want to weep. She was the most powerful female in the Saurian Empire. She commanded fleets, she negotiated treaties. She held the respect of 1,000 worlds, but she could not make her own daughter speak to her with warmth. "I came to see how you were feeling," Kalira said. The words sounded hollow even to her own ears. "We are well," Pyrrha replied. "Always we. Never I." The hatchling had become the protector of her younger siblings, building walls that even a mother could not cross. Solus, the middle child, shifted nervously. He was always trying to please, always watching for signs of approval that Kalira struggled to give. His white scales were marked with faint gold patterns that would have been celebrated on any normal hatchling. On him they just made the albinism more obvious. Little Nick said nothing. She rarely did. The youngest simply stared with those 2 large eyes, seeing everything and offering nothing. Sometimes Kalira wondered what thoughts moved behind that silent gaze. Other times she was afraid to know. "The sun is strong today," Kalira said, grasping for something, anything, to fill the terrible silence. "Perhaps you should stay inside." "We always stay inside," Pyrrha said. There was no accusation in the words, just a flat statement of fact. That made it worse. Kalira opened her mouth to respond, but one of her advisors appeared at her shoulder. Chief Advisor Methos, with his perfect emerald scales and his perfect contempt for anything imperfect. "Your Majesty, the Council requires your presence. There are matters of state that cannot wait. Matters more important than her children." That was what he meant. That was what everyone meant. Kalira felt relief and guilt in equal measure as she nodded. "I will return later," she told her hatchlings. Another promise she was not sure she would keep. Another moment of cowardice dressed up as duty. The council chamber was filled with her most trusted advisors, though Kalira increasingly wondered if trust and tradition had become the same word in her vocabulary. Methos wasted no time. "The situation with your offspring cannot continue, Your Majesty. The other noble families are beginning to question your fitness to rule. 3 albino hatchlings in one clutch? It is unprecedented. Some are calling it a curse." "They are children," Kalira said, but her voice lacked the force it should have carried. "They are a liability," another advisor said. "There are facilities on the outer colonies, places where they could live away from public view, away from those who might use them against you. Hide them, send them away, pretend they did not exist." The suggestions were dressed in practical language, but Kalira heard them for what they were. "Abandon your children to save your throne." "I will consider it," she said, and hated herself for not refusing outright. The meeting dragged on for hours. Trade agreements, border disputes, reports from distant systems. All of it felt meaningless compared to the weight in her chest. When she finally escaped back to her private chambers, a new problem was waiting. "Your Majesty," her communications officer said, bowing low, "a human vessel has requested emergency landing rights. They have experienced critical systems failure and need 3 days for repairs." Humans. Kalira barely suppressed a sigh. The pink-skinned mammals were clever with technology but weak in every way that mattered to Saurian culture. Still, interstellar law was clear. Ships in distress must be given aid. Grant them permission to land in the Eastern Bay. Assign a security detail to monitor them. They are not to enter the palace grounds. "Understood, Your Majesty. There is one detail. The ship's engineer has a young offspring traveling with him. A child of approximately 6 cycles. A human child." Kalira felt a strange pang at the thought. Humans raised their young so differently. They carried them everywhere, spoke to them, constantly seemed to find joy rather than burden in their presence. She had seen it in diplomatic videos and found it baffling. That changes nothing, Kalira said. The restrictions remain. That night, Kalira dreamed of her own hatching day. She remembered her mother's pride, the way the entire court had celebrated. Her perfect scales, her strong limbs, her bright future. She had grown up knowing she was valued, knowing she was worthy. Her own children knew no such certainty. She woke before dawn and went to the nursery. Her hatchlings were curled together in their sleeping nest, white scales gleaming in the darkness. Pyrrha had her wings wrapped protectively around her siblings. Even in sleep, the eldest could not rest. Kalira reached out, meaning to touch Pyrrha's head in a gesture of affection. Her hand hesitated in the air. The gap between intention and action felt like an ocean. She withdrew her hand and left the room as silently as she had entered. In the eastern bay, a human ship settled onto the landing pad. Inside it, a small girl pressed her face against the window, staring out at the alien world with eyes full of wonder rather than judgment. Neither the Empress nor the child knew it yet, but everything was about to change. Sometimes the most powerful forces in the universe come in the smallest packages. Sometimes what looks like weakness is actually a strength that empires have forgotten how to recognize. The sun rose over the palace, harsh and bright. In the shadows of the royal nursery, 3 white hatchlings stirred. And somewhere in the gardens between the palace and the landing bay, 2 worlds were about to collide. Lucy had always been good at finding interesting things. Her father said it was a gift. Her teachers on the ship said it was a problem. Right now, as she squeezed through a gap in the garden wall, Lucy thought it was probably both. The palace was the prettiest place she had ever seen. Everything was carved from pale stone that seemed to glow in the sunlight. There were pools of water that sparkled like diamonds and plants with leaves bigger than she was. Her father had told her to stay near the ship while he worked on the broken engines. He had said it at least 5 times. But Lucy had heard something strange. A sound like birds chirping, but sadder somehow. Lonelier. She followed the sound to a grotto hidden behind a curtain of hanging vines. The inside was cool and dim, and that was where she found them. 3 creatures huddled together in the shadows. They looked like the dragons from her storybooks, but smaller, about the size of large dogs with scales that gleamed white as snow and eyes the color of rubies. They were the most beautiful things Lucy had ever seen. "Wow," she whispered. All 3 heads snapped toward her. The biggest one spread its wings slightly, moving to shield the other 2. Lucy realized they were scared. Of her. The idea seemed silly. She was just a kid. "It's okay," Lucy said, holding up her empty hands like her dad had taught her when they met new aliens. "I'm friendly. I'm Lucy. What are your names?" The creatures stared at her. They did not run away, but they did not come closer either. Lucy decided to sit down right where she was. Her dad said that sometimes you had to let others come to you. "I think you're beautiful," Lucy continued, talking to fill the silence. "You look like snow dragons." "Are you snow dragons? We don't have dragons on Earth, but we have stories about them. They're really cool." The middle-sized creature tilted its head. Its ruby eyes were curious now instead of afraid. "You can understand me, right?" Lucy asked. "My translator works with most species. At least that's what Dad says." "We understand you," the biggest creature said. Her voice was soft and careful. "But you should not be here. If the guards find you, there will be trouble." "I won't tell if you won't tell," Lucy said with a grin. "Are you allowed to have friends? Can I be your friend?" The 3 creatures looked at each other. Something passed between them. Some silent communication that Lucy could not read. Finally, the smallest one spoke. Her voice was barely a whisper. "No one has ever asked to be our friend before." Lucy felt her heart squeeze tight. She knew what it was like to be lonely, moving from ship to ship, never staying anywhere long enough to make real friends, always being the new kid, always being different. "Well, I'm asking," Lucy said firmly. "So what are your names?" "I am Pyrrha," the biggest one said slowly. "This is Solus and that is Nyx." "Those are pretty names," Lucy said. She pulled her backpack around and opened it. "Are you hungry? I have my lunch. We could share it." She pulled out a sandwich, a bag of dried fruit, and a juice box. The three hatchlings stared at the food like they had never seen anything so wonderful. "We should not," Pyrrha said, but Lucy could hear the wanting in her voice. "Why not?" Lucy asked. "Don't you get hungry?" "We are fed," Solus said quietly. "But we eat alone." "In our room," Lucy frowned. That sounded sad. Eating was better when you did it with friends. Everyone knew that. "Then today you eat with me," Lucy declared. She tore her sandwich into pieces and held one out. Pyrrha reached forward carefully like she expected Lucy to pull her hand away. When Lucy just smiled and waited, the hatchling took the piece and ate it quickly. Then Solus came forward. Then Nyx. Soon all four of them were sitting together, sharing Lucy's lunch and talking. Lucy learned that they were the children of the Empress. She learned that they could not go into the sunlight for long because it hurt their skin. She learned that they loved music and stories but had no one to share them with. She learned that their mother was important and busy, and that they tried very hard not to bother her. In return, Lucy told them about Earth, about oceans and forests and cities full of people, about her dad who fixed ships and let her help sometimes, about her mom who had died when Lucy was little, and how her dad said Mom would have loved the stars. "Your father takes you with him everywhere?" Pyrrha asked, sounding amazed. "Of course," Lucy said. "I'm his kid. Where else would I be?" The three hatchlings exchanged another one of those looks. "Our mother does not take us anywhere," Solus said. "We stay in the nursery. We are not supposed to be seen. Why not?" Lucy asked. Nyx spoke up, her small voice growing stronger. "Because we are wrong. Our scales are the wrong color. We make our mother ashamed." Lucy felt anger bubble up in her chest. She was only 6, but she knew wrong when she heard it. "That's dumb," she said flatly. "You're not wrong. You're perfect. Your scales are like snow and pearls in moonlight. Whoever said you were wrong is the one who's actually wrong." Pyrrha made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. "You truly think we are beautiful?" she asked. "I know you are," Lucy said. "Because beautiful isn't about what color you are. It's about who you are, and you guys are nice and smart and fun. That makes you beautiful." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Solus started to cry. Big tears rolled down his white snout. Nyx pressed against him, and Pyrrha wrapped her wings around both of them. Lucy crawled over and hugged all three of them at once. "It's okay," she whispered. "You're not alone anymore. You have me now." Far above, hidden in the palace windows, Empress Kalira watched the scene in the grotto. She had come to ensure the human child was not causing trouble. Instead, she saw her children truly happy for the first time in their lives. She saw them laugh and play and simply be young. She saw what she had been too blind to see before, and something inside her began to crack. David wiped grease from his hands and checked the time. 3 hours since he had last seen Lucy. 3 hours too long. His daughter was brilliant and curious and completely incapable of staying put when there were new things to explore. He found her exactly where he expected, in the garden grotto with 3 very unusual friends. Before he could call out, a tall reptilian figure emerged from the shadows. The Empress herself, though David only knew this from the elaborate crest on her head and the way she carried herself like she owned the entire planet. Which technically she did. "I assume the small human belongs to you," Kalira said. Her voice was cold, but David heard something else underneath. "Confusion, maybe. Or pain." "That's Lucy, yes," David said carefully. "I apologize if she's caused any trouble. She has a talent for finding adventure." "She has certainly found something," Kalira said. She gestured toward the grotto where Lucy was braiding flowers into Nyx's crest scales, while Pyrrha and Solus watched with obvious fascination. David saw the tension in the Empress's body, the way her claws flexed slightly, the way she could not quite look at her own children directly. "Your children are lovely," David said quietly. "Lucy seems quite taken with them." "They are defective," Kalira said, and the words came out automatic. Like a phrase she had repeated so many times it had worn a groove in her mind. David felt anger flash through him, hot and sudden. He thought of his brother, born with a condition that meant he would never walk without help. He thought of every person who had ever called his brother defective or broken or wrong. He thought of every fight he had ever gotten into defending him. "With respect, Your Majesty," David said, and his voice was steel-wrapped in politeness. "There is no such thing as a defective child." Kalira's head snapped toward him. Her eyes were dangerous. "You dare to lecture me about my own offspring?" "I dare to speak truth," David said. And the truth is that your children are perfect exactly as they are. Different does not mean defective. You do not understand our culture, Kalira said. Albinism is a sign of weakness, of genetic failure. It brings shame to the entire bloodline. Then your culture is wrong, David said simply. The Empress looked like she might have him thrown out immediately, or possibly eaten, but David had learned long ago that some things were worth fighting for, and children were always at the top of that list. On Earth, David continued before she could respond, we have a saying. We are judged by how we treat our most vulnerable, not our strongest, not our most perfect, our most vulnerable, because that is where true character shows. Humans are weak, Kalira said. You have no armor, no natural weapons. You barely survive on your own world. You cannot lecture us on strength. You're right, David agreed. Humans are physically weak compared to most species. My daughter could be hurt by things that would not even bother your children, but we learned something important from being weak. We learned that strength is not just about muscles or armor or perfect genetics. Strength is about community, about protecting each other, about loving each other even when it is difficult. Love, Kalira repeated, and she made it sound like a foreign concept. Yes, love, David said. I love my daughter not because she is perfect, but because she is mine, because she exists, because she brings light into my life just by being who she is. And if she were born wrong, Kalira challenged, if she were born in a way that brought shame to your family? David thought of his brother again. His wonderful, brilliant, frustrating brother who had taught David more about courage and joy than anyone else in his life. My brother was born with a condition that means his body does not work the way most bodies work, David said. He needs help with many things. Some people looked at him and saw a burden. I looked at him and saw someone who taught me what really matters. He made our family stronger, not weaker, because loving him taught us how to love better. Kalira was silent for a long moment. In the grotto, Lucy was teaching the hatchlings a game involving hand clapping and singing. Their laughter echoed off the stone walls. They have never laughed like that before, Kalira admitted quietly. I did not know they could. They are children, David said. All children can laugh when they feel safe and loved. I do love them, Kalira said, and for the first time she sounded uncertain. But I do not know how to show them. Every time I look at them, I see my failure. I see my weakness reflected in their scales. You are not seeing them at all, David said gently. You are seeing your own fears. When you truly look at them, you will see three remarkable young beings who need their mother to believe in them. How do you know this? Kalira asked. How do humans understand these things? Because we had to learn, David said. Because we made terrible mistakes for thousands of years. We hurt each other over differences in skin color and abilities and ways of thinking. We made all the same errors you are making. But slowly, painfully, we learned that every person has value, not because of what they can do or how they look, but because they are alive and they are ours to protect. In the grotto, Nyx asked Lucy a question so softly that neither adult could hear it, but they could hear Lucy's response clear and bright. Because your scales are like diamonds and pearls, because your eyes are like rubies, because you are you, and that is the best thing to be. Solus spoke next, his voice carrying across the garden. Why does your father look at you the way our mother never looks at us? The question hung in the air like a blade. Lucy's answer was simple and devastating. Because he loves me, not for what I do. Just for being me. David watched the Empress absorb those words, watched them hit her like physical blows. He saw the exact moment when something inside her broke open. I have been a fool, Kalira whispered. You have been afraid. David corrected, but fear can be overcome, if you choose to overcome it. The Empress looked at him with ancient eyes that suddenly seemed very young. Teach me, she said. Teach me how to love them the way I should have from the beginning. 2 days had passed since the conversation in the garden, and Kalira felt like she was learning to see for the first time. Every glance at her children revealed something she had missed before. Pyrrha's protective instincts, Solus's gentle creativity, Nyx's quiet brilliance. They had always been there. She had simply been too blind to notice, but now she noticed something else, something that hurt worse than her own blindness. She noticed how her children looked at Lucy. They gazed at the human child like she hung the stars. When Lucy spoke, they leaned forward to catch every word. When Lucy laughed, they laughed with her like they had found the secret to happiness. When Lucy had to leave to sleep or eat with her father, all three hatchlings watched her go with expressions of pure longing. They had never looked at Kalira that way. Not once. The Empress stood in the doorway of the grotto watching Lucy teach her children a human song. Something about twinkling stars and wondering what they were. Pyrrha's voice was lovely when she sang. Kalira had never heard it before, had never thought to ask if her daughter could sing. Lucy caught sight of Kalira and waved cheerfully. The hatchlings turned and their expressions changed. Not fear exactly, just a careful neutrality that was somehow worse than fear. They did not expect anything good from their mother. They did not expect anything at all, Your Majesty. Lucy said with a clumsy attempt at a bow. Do you want to sing with us? I do not sing, Kalira said, and the words came out harsher than she meant them to. Oh, Lucy said, and her smile dimmed slightly. That's okay. Maybe you could just listen? Kalira should have said yes. Should have sat down and listened and tried to be part of this small moment. Instead, she felt jealousy rise up in her throat like bile. This human child, this tiny weak creature, had accomplished in 2 days what Kalira had failed to do in an entire cycle. She had made the hatchlings feel loved. I have duties to attend to, Kalira said stiffly. She turned and left before she could see the disappointment in anyone's eyes. She went to her private chambers and paced like a caged animal. Chief Advisor Methos found her there an hour later. Your Majesty, we must discuss the situation with the human presence. Their ship is nearly repaired. They will be leaving soon. Good, Kalira said, and was ashamed of the relief she felt. However, there is concern about the influence the human child has had on your offspring. Some in the court worry that it will make the hatchlings more difficult to manage, more likely to question their place. Their place, Kalira repeated bitterly. Hidden in shadows, forgotten? Methos blinked in surprise. Your Majesty, we have discussed this. It is for the best. For them and for the Empire, is it? Kalira asked. She thought of Lucy's simple question. Why does your father look at you the way our mother never looks at us? Tell me, Methos, when did we decide that hiding our vulnerable was strength? When did we become so afraid of difference that we abandoned our own children? This is not about fear, Your Majesty. This is about maintaining standards, about preserving the purity of our bloodlines. Purity, Kalira said. The word tasted like ash. I have 3 intelligent, capable, remarkable children, and we call them impure because of the color of their scales. What does that say about us? Your Majesty, you cannot be suggesting— I am not suggesting anything yet, Kalira interrupted. But I am questioning everything. That evening she went to the nursery. Her children were there, curled together in their sleeping nest. But they were not asleep. They were talking quietly, and Kalira paused outside the door to listen. Lucy leaves tomorrow, Solus said miserably. What will we do when she is gone? We will remember, Pyrrha said firmly. We will remember that someone saw us and loved us. That has to count for something. I wish she could stay forever, Nyx whispered. I wish Mother loved us the way Lucy does. Mother has important things to worry about, Pyrrha said, but her voice was heavy. We are not one of them. Lucy's father says all children are important, Solus said. Do you think he is right? Or is it just a human thing? I think Lucy is magic, Nyx said simply. And magic does not last. Kalira felt tears on her face. She had not cried since her own hatching day. Empresses did not cry, but mothers did. Mothers who had failed their children cried in the darkness where no one could see. She pushed open the door. 3 heads turned toward her, eyes wide with surprise. Mother? Pyrrha said carefully. Is something wrong? Everything was wrong. That was the truth. Kalira had broken something precious and did not know if it could be repaired. May I sit with you? Kalira asked. The question clearly shocked them. After a long pause, Solus nodded and shifted to make space. Kalira settled beside her children, feeling awkward and enormous and completely out of place. I heard what you said, Kalira admitted, about Lucy leaving, about wishing I loved you the way she does. The hatchlings tensed, waiting for punishment perhaps, or rejection. They had learned to expect nothing good. I do love you, Kalira said, and her voice broke, but I have loved you badly. I have let fear and tradition and pride blind me to who you truly are. I have failed you in every way a mother can fail. You are the Empress, Pyrrha said quietly. You have responsibilities. My first responsibility should have been to you, Kalira said. You 3, my children. Instead, I let others convince me you were shameful, that you were problems to be hidden. I believed them because it was easier than fighting. Easier than admitting that I was afraid. Afraid of what? Nyx asked. Afraid that if I loved you as you deserved, I would lose everything else, Kalira said. My position, my respect, my place in our society. I chose those things over you. And I was wrong. Solus made a small sound. His eyes were wet. Lucy says love is not about being perfect, he said. She says it is about trying. Even when trying is hard. Lucy is wiser than any advisor I have ever had, Kalira said. She is wiser than I have been. Are you going to send us away? Pyrrha asked. The question was blunt, but her voice shook. After Lucy leaves, will you send us to the colonies? Kalira pulled her children close. They were stiff at first, uncertain, but she held on. No, she said firmly. I will never send you away. Tomorrow, things are going to change. I do not know what it will cost me, but I know what it will cost if I do nothing, and I cannot pay that price anymore. The council chamber fell silent when Empress Kalira entered with her 3 white hatchlings at her side. Every eye in the room fixed on them. Shock rippled through the assembled advisors like a physical wave. No one spoke. No one moved. The sight of the Empress publicly acknowledging her albino offspring was unprecedented. Unthinkable. Kalira felt Nyx press closer to her leg. Felt Pyrrha's wings tremble slightly. Felt Solus trying to make himself smaller. They were terrified. But they stood with her anyway. And that simple act of trust gave her strength she had not known she possessed. Honored Council, Kalira said, her voice carrying through the chamber. I have called you here to make an announcement. I will not be sending my children away. I will not hide them. From this day forward, they will be acknowledged as the royal heirs they are, full members of this court, full citizens of this empire. The silence broke like shattering glass. Voices erupted from every corner. Outrage, disbelief, anger. Chief Advisor Methos stood, his face dark with fury. Your Majesty, this is unacceptable. You cannot simply overturn centuries of tradition. The law is clear. Albino hatchlings are to be removed from public life. It is for their own protection as much as for the integrity of our bloodlines. The law is cruel, Kalira said flatly, and I will change it. You do not have the authority, another advisor shouted. The council must approve such changes, and we will not. Your Majesty, we respect you, but this madness must stop. These hatchlings are defective. They weaken our entire civilization. Kalira felt Solus flinch at the word defective. She placed a wing over him protectively. They are not defective, she said. They are different. And I have learned from an unlikely source that different is not the same as lesser. An unlikely source? Methos asked suspiciously. A human child, Kalira said, 6 years old, with more wisdom than this entire council combined. The chamber erupted again. Methos's face turned an interesting shade of purple. You are taking advice from a human child. Your Majesty, this is beyond inappropriate. This is a threat to your rule. I formally challenge your fitness to lead this empire. The challenge hung in the air. Kalira had known it was coming, had prepared for it as best she could, but hearing the words still felt like a blade to the heart. Very well, Kalira said. Let the challenge be heard. But first I will call witnesses. I request that the human engineer and his daughter be brought before this council. Methos looked like he might explode, but the law was clear. A challenged ruler had the right to present testimony before the vote. Within minutes, David and Lucy were escorted into the chamber. Lucy held her father's hand tightly, her eyes wide as she took in the room full of towering reptilian beings. Then she saw Pyrrha, Solus, and Nyx. Her face lit up like the sun. You brought them out, Lucy exclaimed. Are they allowed to be here now? I am trying to make it so, Kalira said gently. But some people believe they should remain hidden. I hoped you might explain why that is wrong. Lucy looked at the assembled council. She was 6 years old and barely came up to most of their knees. She should have been terrified. Instead, she looked offended. That's mean, she said bluntly. Why would you hide them? They're wonderful. Child, Methos said in a patronizing tone, you do not understand our ways. These hatchlings are genetically inferior. They are a mark of shame on the royal bloodline. That's dumb, Lucy said flatly, and several council members gasped at her audacity. They're not inferior. They're just different colors. Who cares about colors? Our entire civilization cares, Methos said. Appearance matters. Strength matters. Perfection matters. Why? Lucy asked. The simple question seemed to throw Methos off balance. Because it has always been so. Because it is the foundation of our culture. But why? Lucy persisted. My dad says that just because something has always been done one way does not mean it is the right way. He says humans used to do lots of dumb things because of tradition, like not letting girls go to school, or saying some people were better than others because of how they looked. But we learned better. Why can't you? We are not humans, another advisor said coldly. We are saurians. We have standards. Lucy turned to look at Pyrrha, Solus, and Nyx. Then she looked back at the council. Pyrrha is the smartest person I ever met, Lucy said. She knows about stars and math, and she tells amazing stories. Solus makes beautiful art, and he is kind to everyone. Nyx sees things other people miss, and she asks the best questions. They are perfect exactly as they are. If your standards say they are not, then your standards are wrong. David spoke up for the first time. My daughter is young, but she speaks truth. On Earth, we learned a hard lesson. Every time we excluded people because they were different, every time we said some lives mattered less than others, we made ourselves smaller, weaker, less human. The strength of a civilization is not measured by how perfect its citizens are. It is measured by how it treats those who need protection most. You speak of human weakness as if it were strength, Methos sneered. I speak of human survival, David corrected. We are physically weak compared to most species. We have no armor, no natural weapons, no special abilities. By your standards, we should have gone extinct long ago. But we did not. We survived because we learned to protect each other. All of us, not just the strong or the perfect. All of us. And what does that have to do with these hatchlings? An advisor asked. Everything, David said. Because the moment you decide some of your children are disposable, you have already lost. You have admitted that your civilization is too fragile to accommodate difference, too weak to practice real compassion. If the mighty Saurian Empire cannot find room for 3 remarkable young beings simply because their scales are white instead of green, then how mighty are you really? The chamber fell silent again. This time the silence felt different, uncertain. Several younger council members were nodding slowly. Others looked uncomfortable. Then Pyrrha stepped forward. Her voice shook, but she spoke clearly. I do not ask you to celebrate us. I do not ask you to pretend albinism is something to be proud of if that is not your truth. I only ask that you see us, not as symbols of shame, not as genetic failures, just as people who want to live and learn and contribute to the empire we love. We did not choose to be born this way, but we choose to make something good of our lives anyway. Is that not strength? 3 months had changed everything and nothing. The garden still bloomed with exotic flowers. The palace still gleamed in the sunlight. But the shadows were no longer hiding places of shame. They were just shadows, and the 3 white hatchlings walked through them into the light whenever they pleased. Kalira sat on a bench watching Nyx examine a crystalline formation near one of the pools. Her youngest child was talking excitedly about the molecular structure, her ruby eyes bright with enthusiasm. Pyrrha and Solus were nearby, Pyrrha reading from a datapad while Solus sketched the garden scene before him. They were happy. Truly happy, and Kalira had learned to be happy watching them, even if they did not turn to her first with every thought and discovery. She was learning that being a mother meant taking joy in their joy, not in her own importance to them. Mother, Nyx called out, come see this. The crystal formation is refracting light in the most interesting pattern. Kalira rose and walked over. Nyx explained the physics involved with barely contained excitement. Kalira understood perhaps half of it, but she listened attentively and asked questions. That was what David had taught her. Listening was the first step to loving. The council vote had been closer than anyone expected. Methos and his supporters had been outvoted by a slim margin. Many of the younger council members, moved by Pyrrha's speech and Lucy's simple honesty, had sided with Kalira. The changes were slow but steady. Albino Saurians across the empire were beginning to come forward, no longer hiding in shame. Support networks were forming. Laws were being rewritten. It was not perfect. Many still held to the old ways. But progress was happening. That was enough for now. A familiar sound made all 3 hatchlings look up, the distinctive hum of a human ship approaching. Kalira felt them tense with excitement. Lucy was returning. The reunion was exactly as joyful as expected. Lucy practically flew out of the ship and was immediately swarmed by 3 much larger hatchlings. They had grown in 3 months. Nyx was nearly as big as Lucy now. Pyrrha was even larger, but they were still gentle as they surrounded their friend, chirping and clicking in their excitement. "I missed you so much," Lucy cried, hugging each of them. "I drew pictures for you, and I learned some new games, and I have so many stories to tell you." David approached Kalira with a respectful nod. "Your Majesty, you look well." "I am learning," Kalira said simply. "It is harder than I expected, but worth it." "The hardest things usually are," David agreed. He watched the reunion with a smile. "Lucy talked about your children every day. I think she missed them more than she missed her favorite toys." Kalira felt the familiar pang of jealousy and breathed through it. David had taught her about that too. Jealousy was natural. Acting on it was the problem. "They speak of Lucy constantly," Kalira admitted. "I will not lie. It is difficult to know that my children love her in a way they may never fully love me. I spent too long teaching them to fear disappointment. That is not easily undone." "But you are undoing it," David said. "That is what matters." Lucy was showing the hatchlings a drawing she had made. It depicted the 4 of them together, surrounded by stars. In the picture, they were all smiling. Kalira noticed that Lucy had drawn herself smaller than she really was and the hatchlings larger. To Lucy, they were giants. "Heroes from a story, Lucy," Kalira called gently. "May I speak with you for a moment?" The girl bounded over, still grinning. "Hi, Your Majesty. Did you see how big they got? And Pyrrha says she is learning engineering now. Just like my dad." "I did see," Kalira said. "And I wanted to thank you." Lucy tilted her head in confusion. "Thank me for what?" "For seeing my children when I could not. For loving them when I was too afraid to. For teaching an entire empire what really matters." "Oh," Lucy said, shuffling her feet. "I just wanted to be their friend. They are really cool." "They are remarkable," Kalira agreed. "And I was blind to it. You gave me new eyes." "My dad says everybody makes mistakes," Lucy said seriously. "The important thing is fixing them." "Are you fixing yours?" "I am trying," Kalira said. "Then that is good," Lucy said simply. She paused, then added, "Pyrrha told me you have been spending time with them every day, reading together and talking about their interests. She says it is nice, such a small word. But coming from Pyrrha, it was a victory. Do they ever speak of me?" Kalira asked, and immediately regretted the question. It sounded needy, desperate, but Lucy just nodded. "Solus said you are learning to be a good mom. He says it is hard for you because you have to unlearn bad things first. But he thinks you are doing okay." Doing okay. Kalira had once commanded fleets and negotiated with empires. Now her greatest achievement was doing okay as a mother, and she found she was proud of it. That evening, all of them shared a meal together. David and Lucy, Kalira and her 3 children. They sat in the garden under the stars, eating and talking and laughing. Lucy fell asleep against Nyx's side halfway through dessert. David smiled and made no move to disturb her. Kalira watched her daughter gently drape a wing over the sleeping child. Watched Pyrrha and Solus lean against each other contentedly. Watched David's easy affection for his daughter even as she drooled slightly on his arm. "You asked me once how humans love imperfect children," David said quietly. "Do you understand now?" "I am beginning to," Kalira said. "You do not see them as imperfect. You simply see them." "Exactly," David said. "Every child is a whole person, deserving of love not because they earn it, but because they exist." "My children do not love me as they love Lucy," Kalira said. "I have accepted this, but it still hurts." "They love you differently now than they loved Lucy at first," David said. "Lucy gave them unconditional acceptance when they needed it most. That created a pure, simple bond. What they are building with you is more complicated. It is trust being rebuilt after betrayal, respect being earned after it was lost. That kind of love is harder, slower, but it is also deeper, more real." Pyrrha spoke up without opening her eyes. "I heard that, Mother. And it is true. Lucy showed us we deserved love. You are showing us that people can change. We need both." Kalira felt tears on her face again. She was crying more these days. Learning to feel fully meant feeling everything, joy and pain together. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" Pyrrha asked. "For giving me a chance to be better. For not giving up on me when I had given up on myself." Solus opened one eye. "You are our mother. We could not give up on you even if we wanted to." Nix, barely awake, added. Besides, Lucy would be disappointed if we did. They all laughed at that. Even Kalira, the galaxy continued to turn. The Empire continued to change. There would be setbacks and struggles and moments of doubt, but in this garden, under these stars, a family that had been broken was slowly healing. Not because of grand gestures or dramatic revelations, but because of daily choices. Because a mother chose to see her children truly. Because children chose to believe their mother could change. Because a human child had shown them all that the most revolutionary act in any civilization is simply loving without conditions. Somewhere in the palace, advisors plotted and worried about tradition. Somewhere in space, other empires rose and fell. But here, in this moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was this: 3 white hatchlings sleeping peacefully, a human child dreaming of dragons, a father watching over his daughter, and an empress who had finally learned that the greatest strength was not in being perfect but in being present. The future was uncertain. But for the first time in a long time, Kalira believed it would be good.